Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. I am Chris. I'm here with my partner Justin. As always, this is episode 201, and we thought who better to talk to after our 200th episode discussing Ayreon and the Universal Migrator Parts 1 and 2 albums, but the mastermind himself, Arjen Lucassen. Justin, I just want to pull to you first. How are you? And I assume you're just as excited as I am to have this conversation.
I most certainly am. These albums were very formative, as we had mentioned, in the last episode. Formative in the stuff that we were listening to in and around, the turn of the century. So again, you said it best. Who better than the brainchild of all of this? And so, Arjen, welcome to the Metal Exchange.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Justin. Sorry, I got a nasty cough going there. There you go.
Yeah, very good. It's great to have you join us. It is an absolute pleasure. Let me kind of start by saying I cannot believe that it has been almost 24 years since these two albums came out. And it's funny because we're all still in our 20s, so I don't know how it's possible that the albums are older than we are, but here we are.
Yeah, right.
We'll go back, I guess, to the end of the Electric Castle and kind of what led up to the Universal Migrator and the two albums. Where were you personally and in your musical journey that you said, you know what, I want to release two very different albums, I guess targeted at two kind of different audiences at that time?
Well, each new album I do is a challenge. Should be a challenge, and each album is also always a reaction to the previous album. So the first album I did was Final Experiment, which was like a rock opera in the 90s, which was like stupid, It was the days of Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and nobody wanted to touch it, and some Japanese company, JVC, released it, and lo and behold, there was an audience, So what I usually do is I make a safe album and then I make like a more dangerous album. So Final Experiment for me was kind of like, of course it was, weird to do a rock opera in the 90s, but still, it was this huge bombastic rock opera with a lot of guests and stuff. And I just knew there was an audience, and it started selling like crazy, So then I did the follow-up, and I thought I want to do something completely different, forget the whole rock opera thing. I'm going to make a dangerous album, which was actual fantasy. And unfortunately, that didn't sell so well. People loved the rock opera idea and the story and all the singers, and that was gone on actual fantasy. So I thought, oh my God, if this could be the end of Ayreon, so I got to do something totally over the top now. A make or break album, which was Electric Castle, which was back to the rock opera thing, So that was kind of, again, my safe album, where I knew people would like it. And they did, because that was my breakthrough album.
Yep.
After the first two albums, finally that album started selling. And the fan base got bigger and stuff like that. But then there's me again, Let's do something dangerous again. Let's not make an Electric Castle part 2, because I hate part 2s, It's like Jaws part 2 and etc. All the movies, and it is never as good as the first one. You can't capture that magic. So I thought I got to do something really different. And all that time with Ayreon, I'd been wondering, who is my audience? Because I didn't play live, I started the Ayreon project because I stopped playing live. I didn't want to play live anymore. So I had no contact with the fans. And it was a little bit before the internet, that wasn't really going yet. So I wanted to know, like, who are my fans? Are they the proggy guys or are they the metal guys? Because both those styles are present on the first three albums. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to find out, what is my audience? But also, wouldn't it be cool to please the prog fans with an album without metal? And wouldn't it be cool to please the metal fans, with an album without prog? So that was my thinking. looking back at it, my conclusion was people like both, they like the combination too. So to split it up was dangerous. But for me, it works, for me, it works for that album. I should not have done it again. Just went back to mixing the two styles again on the same album. But I ended up with Universal Migrator with two albums I really like with a lot of classic songs. Because when I was doing the Ayreon Universe, the first live show, after 25 years not playing live, and I was picking songs, I noticed like, oh my God, I'm picking all the songs from the Universal Migrator. Somehow it has a lot of classic songs like Dawn of Main Souls and Into the Black Hole, and all these tracks. So I think it's probably, especially the Dream Sequencer, one of my favorite albums of Ayreon.
Was there any pushback from the label saying 2 albums, same release date? Why not just package them together? Or were they on board with basically releasing both and just kind of seeing where it went at that point?
Well, of course they were on board because they would sell twice as much.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But looking back, I should not have done that, the reason, of course, you get fans thinking like that was the reason, to split them up. So I would sell double the amount, that was never the reason, of course. For me, was the reason like then the prog fans don't have to sit through all the noise, and then
the metal fans don't deal with the spacey prog rock.
Yeah, all this Pink Floydy shit, It's like, hey man, I want a headbang, That was the idea behind it. But of course, as soon as I re-released them, I re-released them in one package, the way it should have been. So,
my experience listening to this was very similar to what you just described. Whereas, like, I am a big power metal fan, and so I see this list of singers where it's like Andy Darris and just everybody that was, Bruce Dickinson.
I know, it's scary.
I'm thinking to myself, this is it. This is going to be the greatest album I ever heard. And then I go and I listen to part 1 thinking like, oh, this isn't going to be as nearly like my cup of tea. And I end up loving it.
Well, look at here.
There you go.
That's awesome.
Because that's what I want. I knew there would be more people interested in the Flight of the Migrator, in the heavy one, And in the end, they did. That album sold more.
But the press at the time, if I recall, like all the internet press and the magazines, they gave rave reviews to both parts and just acknowledged that they were different artistic visions of you at the time, but they both were great. Regardless of the metal audience wound up gravitating towards both parts, and the prog rock fans, I think, had an appreciation for these vocalists that they had never heard before, like Fabio Leone and stuff. So I think that it was just a perfect blend because there is overlap if you give it a chance.
It's a great way to put them together, put the fans together. And I hoped it helped, because now there is no difference anymore.
Exactly.
With bands like Dream Theater, you both find the Floyd stuff and you find the heavy stuff. And it's so cool that happened, that it opened people's minds. My mind has always been open. I've always been open to so many different styles of music. Well, I lie a little bit, not always. At some point when you become a metal guy, you just want metal and everything else is shit. So I went through that period.
I think we all go through it, but then eventually your mind opens up to other things.
Oh yes.
And I think that's important because if I just listen to just metal all day, it gets a little stale after a while. And what makes it great is when you kind of throw in a little Pink Floyd or you throw in a little Pearl Jam, and then you mix it in with, your Iron Maiden and all that stuff. So
yeah. Well, it made it legit for metal guys to say that, hey, I like the proggy stuff too.
That's
You
right.
know, and that's good.
Exactly. And that it wasn't like viewed as a negative. In fact, if anything,
No.
people
And
just
before that, it was, you know,
Oh, exactly.
especially in the 80s. I mean, that was so black and white.
Yep.
It was terrible, you know.
And,
Like you were in a metal band, you have keyboards. Ah, man, you're.
oh, I mean, forget it. I mean, it was
Hide
like
them behind the curtains.
it was a bright line rule. It was just something you didn't do, and
No, you didn't do it.
And now everyone's using them. So obviously, there's been an integration there, which is fantastic.
Right, yeah, I'm glad about that. Because in the 70s, more stuff was possible. You know?
Yes.
You take bands like Uriah Heep, you know, the keyboards were just as, maybe even more important than the guitar.
That's right.
But then suddenly, the 80s, you know, nothing was allowed, and yeah.
It's amazing how we come full circle on these things.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Do you?
I'm curious. I'm curious about the story of the Universal Migrator and how you came up with the tale of this. You know, the whole. I know that it harkens back to, you know, earlier Ayreon albums where the idea first started with, you know, the end of the world and this colonist on Mars and stuff. But you know, obviously you're a big fan of sci-fi, and so I was just curious how you came up with such it's such a unique story. I'm really curious how the story part of it came together.
I was talking to someone about reincarnation, and this person was saying, yeah, reincarnation, and we when we die, we enter another body, and well, you know what reincarnation is. And I thought, well, how can that be, you know? Because in the beginning there were just a few people, and now there are billions of people. So where do all these souls come from? It's not possible.
Right.
You know, there's more and more people, so
we're not multiplying, so it can't just be.
No. So I was thinking about that, and somehow I came up with the idea. I wanted to address a lot of topics, you know, a lot of topics that I like, especially on the dream sequencer that interested me, and go back in time. You know, I love history, so I thought, what if there would be like a machine that makes you go back to your previous lives? That way, I can tell a great story without it being a continuing story, you know, with characters talking to each other like I had interacting like I had on the Electric Castle, you know. Also, I made the choice. I did all the singers now, you know, 10 singers on Electric Castle who played parts. Now I wanted to go back to one singer a song. I thought that would be very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, and as the idea kind of came to light, did you write part one first and then write part two, or were you writing both parts simultaneously? Because there's obviously
no.
Okay, it was focus on one and then
right. Yeah, on one I thought I can go back in history, but then at some point it was like, oh, what now? You know, I've gone back so far. How can I go back even further? And then I thought, well, that's more extreme. You know, you go back and you follow this migrator soul in space. And of course, like you said, I'm a huge sci-fi lover and very interested in everything space, you know, all the documentaries and the movies and the TV shows, etc., etc. But that was, of course, more complicated. In those days, you couldn't just Google shit. I think you didn't have that yet. So you had to go to a library, you know, and I didn't want to make any mistakes, you know, especially when you talk about space and you talk about black holes and quasars and stuff like that. I wanted to be correct. Well, you can't always be 100% correct, of course, but because that was 20 years ago and now things have completely changed. People know a lot more. But yeah, it was a lot of trips to the library and getting books. Also, you know, the dream sequencer, also the history on Earth, you know, I didn't want to make any mistakes either. So, but it's cool to work that way.
And now that as the music starts coming together, how do you identify, the wonderful musicians that are on both albums? Because obviously part 2 has some of the biggest names in what was at that point, the power metal genre. And then part 1, you have obviously Lana, who you'd worked with in the past, and then some other names that were a little bit lesser known, Dutch musicians and whatnot. How did you kind of decide who you wanted to work with and kind of plot which songs would be best for which voices?
That's one of my talents. People know me as, it sounds arrogant.
No, it's true though. I mean, you've been doing it for decades. So
I'm totally not arrogant because I don't see myself as a genius at all. I don't see myself as a good musician or a good guitar player or a good singer but I recognize talent and that's my talent. And every time I hear a singer, I just have to hear one line and I'm like, oh yes, this is the one. I can do something with this. I just make a list. Even now I have a list of like 200 singers or something that I would like to work with. So I always keep that list. And once I finish an album, so I always start with the music. Then I think which singer would fit this style of music, which singer would fit the story, and which singer would fit the song. And that's easy for me, I just go through the list. Oh yeah, this person would be great on that song. And, so that comes easy.
Were there any vocalists that you wanted to get that just didn't pan out, or you had you wrote a song specifically for somebody that you just weren't able to get? Like I remember hearing an interview with Tobias Sammet saying that he had written a song for Avantasia that he wanted Meatloaf to sing, and he could never get Meatloaf.
I know. He told me. Yeah. And Paul Stanley, he's been after Paul Stanley for a long time. He couldn't do that either. Well, the good thing is I don't write for singers. I write a song and then I find a singer for the song. So I work the other way around.
Okay.
It's very strange. A good example is always Electric Castle. It wasn't like I had a Highlander in the story. It was like, okay, I can get fish, so I'm going to write a Highlander into the story. So that hasn't happened, but it has happened that of course singers say no. That happens. It's getting easier for me, because I'm getting more known. So it's easier now, and singers even start, at some point started contacting me. But I can't remember on Dream Sequencer, who I asked and said no. But there are always, for me it would be like the ultimate dream to get David Gilmour. Obviously you can hear the influence on the Dream Sequencer.
No question about that. I think it is loud. It resonates on a number of tracks.
Right,
for sure.
But I interviewed him for a magazine. I went to England and interviewed him. And I gave him Electric Castle, and I could already see in his face, like, oh my God, no, go away. Already when he saw me with the long hair, he was like, oh, one of these rockers.
That's great.
So I gave him the Electric Castle, and he, thank you, and he put it in his basket, but I could almost already see it disappear in the bin, So that didn't work out, and there's lots of singers that I've been after for so long. Of course, Dio, was always on top of my list.
Sure.
I even met him once, and he gave me his email address, dio@aol.com. I still remember. Dio dude at AOL. and I mailed it 1 million times. And so, it happens, people say no.
But at the time, I have to think that getting somebody like Bruce Dickinson had to be just even inspiring for yourself at the time, because you were Electric Castle had obviously put you into the next stratosphere, but then to get somebody like Bruce, the voice of an Iron Maiden, that
totally.
had to be, I remember that jumping out to me when I was younger. I said,
wow. Yeah, that was a dream come true. The good thing is, my manager was also the manager of Halloween, or he was connected to manager of Halloween.
Yes.
And Iron Maiden. It was that Sanctuary management.
Yes.
And my manager, I said, if you see Bruce, can you give him Electric Castle? And he happened to see him, in the hallway, and he was like, hey man, listen to this. and Bruce loved it. He
Wow.
loved the album. And I heard it and I was like, no, this is not happening, cause as a kid, I was watching like Monsters of Rock live on TV with all my friends, and Bruce Dickinson was running around on that stage, I still remember. And I was like, that guy is going to be on my album. No way, that guy's going to come to my studio. And, yeah, that was totally amazing. And I love the fact that, with Iron Maiden, it's often fast songs and fast lyrics, And I was like, what if I have him sing like a slow song, where he can show off another side of his voice. And he happened to love the song as well. So yeah, he came to my studio. He did a couple of takes, and that was it. So
it's easy when you're Bruce. I mean, but it reminded me more of his solo albums than it does a lot of the Iron Maiden stuff, just in terms of what the ultimate songs would be. But it gave him a chance to really shine, and before long he'd be back in Maiden and on his way again. So it was.
It started with Samson with me. I was already when he was still in Samson, Shock Tactics and Head On. What was the other one?
And here we are,
riding with the angels.
Yeah. And here we are 40 years later, and he's still running around on stage.
I know, it's amazing.
An ageless wonder. But as the songs start coming together, is the plan to then invite everyone to your studio to do like a day or two of takes? Is that how is that still how the process is today?
No.
Okay.
I wish it was. But, singers, they have their studio at home, and especially if they're from the States or whatever, far away.
They can just do it and then send the tracks back and forth type of thing.
They're like, hey man, I can do it at home. Yeah, but I would prefer you in my studio. Yeah, but that cost me days, that cost me 3-4 days. And I understand, and people still come here, but not as much as they used to. But yeah, on these albums, they all came to me, I think, or I went to them. I think they all came to me. Yeah, Bruce too, and and I remember Neil Morse. I recorded in LA because I was in LA, so I happened to be there. But apart from that, they all came to my studio, and that's magic. They're standing beside me, and together you can work on it, and that's great. And when something doesn't work out, I grab my guitar and it's like, let's try it this way, or let's put a harmony on, and that works. And I want the singer next to me. That's when I get the best results.
I think there's something to be said for having that interaction and making little tweaks along the way, as opposed to just sending tracks back and forth, which is great. And obviously, it's just the way of the world these days. Yeah. But by doing it that way in real time, you can make changes to things and just take it to that next level.
Yeah. Well, some singers, it did work, like Devin Townsend. I sent in my stuff and I got it back, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I could never have got it so good.
Yeah. He's a master of his craft, so I'm not surprised.
I know. And I sent him my guides, and he completely discarded them, which was a good thing because he did so much better. And sometimes it works out, like with Tommy Karavik too. I sent him the stuff. Before, he always came to my studio and he said, I can't do it, and he of Camelot, and he. But sometimes, of course, I'm not gonna mention names, but sometimes it doesn't work out. I get it, and then I have to ask him to change stuff, and sometimes they don't want to change stuff, and that's painful. That's shitty when that happens, but it does happen.
As somebody who recognizes talent the way you do, on this Universal Migrator Part 1, Flora does vocals on here, and at the time she was in After Forever, and she's gone on to, be in Nightwish and really just explode. Were there singers that you worked with that you said, oh man, this person I think is going to be a star one day? They just need a little exposure? Because I think of, in particular, I think of Sarah from Ancient Bards and Cami from Oceans of Slumber, where they were two singers that you had on your albums that might not have been as much of a big name, but I thought that they deserved that platform.
Oh yeah.
Has there been anybody like that where you were like, oh, like, or even Floor at the time, like, be like, oh,
especially Floor, especially Floor,
yeah.
you know, I heard it, and she wasn't known at all at that point, but I was like, I gotta have her on the album. And on Electric Castle, I had Sharon, of course, of Within Temptation,
Yes,
who got really big later on, and on each album, I think there is. Singers that were unknown at the time and that are known now. But of course, it would be very arrogant of me to assume that's because they were on my on my stuff, you know. But I like to think it, of course, that it helped.
and
well, you did wonders for Dee Snider's career after he was on another album. So.
But holy shit, Dee Snider! We were talking about people recording in their own studio, and he went to a studio and. I asked his manager, like, can I have multiple takes? You this and that. I got typical manager. No, you're not allowed to ask anything. And I was like, okay, sorry. And then I got the whole session. I got all the tracks he recorded, and they were all brilliant. Holy shit. That guy is so good.
Unbelievable.
I didn't expect him to be this good, you know. He just didn't worry about. He sent me the whole session. I could all hear all his fuck ups and all, but even his fuck ups were good, you know.
And when you're kind of going through the list, and how do you said it's nearly 200 people long at this point. How are you identifying new talent? Or where are you finding some of these vocalists? Because like Cammy, I think is a perfect example here from the States, where not on a lot of people's radars, but got on yours somehow.
I heard Cammy sing, which song was it? On a compilation album. There was a magazine with a compilation album with cover songs. And I think, what did she cover? Something like White I Shaded Pale, or what's the other song? I don't know. She covered the song, but I was like,
was it Moody Blues?
Yeah. Nights in White Satin, maybe?
Yeah, that's it. Because they performed it live, I remember.
Okay, yeah, Nights in White Satin. And I was, what is this, you know? And I went into it, and then I found out that I like a lot more of her stuff. And then it's always scary, you know. One, can I reach them, you know? And if I reach them, will they like my music, or will they know me? If they know me, it helps, you know. And I contacted her, and her husband Dobber, who is the drummer in Oceans of Slumber, was a huge fan. You know, he had all my stuff, and he was like, whoa, you know. So that really helped. So they came to my studio together, and such lovely people, and yeah, fantastic.
That's great. And I guess as you're kind of, putting the album together, did you realize when you were done with the writing and the recording that you had something special, and something that, I guess, to your point, when you started to play live again, a lot of this music made the ultimate cut. So did you realize that you were on the precipice of something special, or was it even a surprise to you later on?
I always am, you know. Because when I do especially an Ayreon album, I'm so proud of it every time. Otherwise, I wouldn't release it.
Sure.
So yeah, every time I have high expectations. I must say, I don't think. It's hard to say, because it's different record companies who re-release it, so it's hard to say anything about the sales figures. But I think it was indeed the Dangerous album, because it may not have done as well as Electric Castle and Universal Migrator. Human Equation, did it come after? I think
yeah,
so.
It was, I think, 2004, so it was about 4 years after this.
That was a big seller. So so it was a little bit of a dip for the Human Equation. Which is weird, you know, especially because singers of Bruce Dickinson on it and stuff. But I think that people find it difficult. Maybe, what is that? 2 albums, 2 different styles. You know, it wasn't like Human Equation, you know,
which was kind of a blend of both, but just in one
right,
package.
And you had the whole story, and it was more of a clear picture what it was, and Universal Migrator may have been confusing for people.
Did you have a hard time selecting the tracks from this, or like what were some of your favorites? I know I had read online that Temple of the Cat was not your favorite, but other tracks, I'm assuming, that kind of have maybe in your eyes stood the test of time a little bit more. Does anything still resonate with from these two albums?
Oh, very much. Most, like I said earlier, most of my I like this one. The songs on this one. There are more classic songs than on other albums, I think.
Sure.
I got it here.
There you go.
So
Beautiful.
I leave my glasses, a shitty thing. It's hard to say, man. I mean, My House on Mars is like a weird song, I still remember a lot of people told me, you can't do that, you can't do that. That's not cool. And what is that? What are those weird vocals, But yeah, I love that song. Shooting Company is one of my favorites because I'm a huge Beatles fan.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a lot of John Lennon. In that song.
Chris, I mean, I'm not going to pat ourselves on the back, but we actually went into the fact that that late era Beatles John Lennon vibe is prominent on that tune.
And then the thing is, I found John Lennon, the guy who sings it. He's a completely unknown Dutch guy, but again, I just happened to hear one of his songs, and I was like, "What is this? A Dutch guy?"
It's the second coming of John Lennon for all intents and purposes.
I know.
It's incredible, and Chris and I were saying that we didn't know who he was, but it just perfect for that song.
The backstory is I discovered him during Electric Castle.
Okay.
Actually. And I was like, he was this completely unknown guy, and he had the voice of John Lennon. I was like, oh my God, even the pronunciation, So he came to my studio, and he was a bit of a difficult guy, and he didn't know my music and stuff like that. Of course, he was a huge Beatles fan too. So he sang the part of the hippie.
Oh, okay.
He sang my part
together. Yeah. Yes, that makes sense.
He sang the whole album, and he finished it, and I was like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then somehow he thought he went to a manager, and this manager sent me a contract, like a 5-page contract with you're not allowed to release it as a single, you're not allowed to put his picture on the album, and you're not allowed this and that. And it was one of the coolest moments in my life. I got a red pen, I crossed it out, I sent it back to him. Hey man, I'm going to pay you. No problem, but I'm not going to use it.
Yeah. Listen, I get, and it's funny because you would think he.
And sorry.
Yeah.
I have to finish
Please.
The same day, I went to my studio and re-sang the whole thing myself.
God bless.
Like in one evening, I was like so angry, and I was like, I'm going to do it myself.
I love it. And you would think he would want the notoriety and to kind of get out.
Yeah, and it wasn't his fault because he came back to me and he said, so sorry, man, and I hate not being on the album now. Sorry, man, it was the manager, and I understood it, and I'm a, how do you call that? If you forgive someone, I'm a guy.
Yeah, just
forgiving guy.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, man, I'm gonna find a song for you on the next album.
That's great.
We'll do it anyway. And even I did like this fan only album called Aeronauts Only.
Yep.
And it actually has a track, the original Hippies' Amazing Flight. Something. And it has his takes that he sang for Electric Castle. So yeah, it all ended well.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So
I haven't heard from him anymore, though. No.
Yeah, and you can't really find anything about him, even with
Google.
He's like lost.
I know. I googled him too because I wanted to contact him just to ask how he was, but I couldn't find him anywhere.
He could still be in the black hole for all we know.
That was his band. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Was there any thought, and I know you had stopped playing live, prior to this, but was there any thought of ever bringing this to the grand stage? I know that obviously you've gone back since and, done live shows in Tilburg, but has there been any thought of doing like a tribute to these albums live or not so much?
The problem with that is that, like I said earlier, each song has a different singer.
Yeah. So
it's a single singer. And the
very
chemistry, the
identifiable.
cool thing about the Ayreon live shows is the chemistry, you know. That singer comes on, that singer, they give itself a high five, or they have this battle on stage, and the chemistry between singers, that's what makes Ayreon shows work, which you would not have on the Universal Migrator.
We had listeners, one in particular from Australia, one of our Patreon members, who went to the shows just back, a couple of months ago, and he was saying that he's been to countless shows, throughout his life, but he said that this was a true, religious experience for him to actually experience it live. So,
great.
An unforgettable time for sure. So, it's something on our bucket list, and we will get out there at some point if you do another run. But, as of now,
between you and me, keep September 2025 free.
Done. I will say nothing, and we'll just go from there, and I'll start blocking off time on my calendar. That sounds great.
Cool.
We'll just take all of September off next year.
Yeah, there you go.
The whole month.
Have you given any thought? So what was interesting to me is that when you re-released these albums, you had actually released a lot of the B-sides with alternate takes with some of the other vocalists. I know Ian Parry and Damian Wilson doing some different versions of the songs.
Right.
Was that just part of the repackaging to just kind of let people hear these different versions of songs that they had known for years at that point?
Oh, yeah. A lot of them were actually guide vocals. Ian did guide vocals for Russell, because Russell couldn't come over. So Russell recorded in his own studio together with Michael Romeo. And again, an example that it is possible, that I'm not
Absolutely.
present. And I remember he played it to me on the phone. And I cried. I cried. I heard it, at the dawn of time, oh my God. I was like, this is not possible. And he was like, don't you like it? I don't hear anything. And I was like, I couldn't talk,
That young Russell Allen vocals when he was doing that stuff in the late 90s is just unbelievable. And he
was the best in the world at that time.
Yeah, and his vocal stylings have changed since then. He's gone a lot, darker and raspier in many ways.
I don't like it.
I don't either.
He knows I don't like it. And every time he came to my studio, but that's the way he works.
Yeah.
He comes to my studio, he did the Star One stuff, the second album I still with him, and immediately he was like, and I was like, no, Russell. And he said, oh yeah, you don't like that, huh? And he said, but I have to start that way. He has to start like really gritty and dirty, and then he works his way back to
interesting,
to clean. It's the same with Dino Jalusic now. He's
yes.
They don't like their clean voices. They want to distort it and they want to make it bigger. And
give me the clean stuff any day of the week.
Yeah, and Dio did the same. Dio did the same. If you listen to him in Rainbow and even in Black Sabbath,
yes,
it was so clean and still powerful. And when he started going solo, it was like,
still Dio, but not the same.
No.
And so I'm happy you brought up Star One. I had a question because as we moved away and we'll kind of wrap up this era here, but when, after these albums are recorded, they obviously did get very good reviews, as I mentioned. And then The Human Equation wouldn't be for another 4 years after these releases. But in the middle, you released that Star One album. And I was always wondering, what was the inspiration behind doing those albums under a different moniker and not under the Ayreon banner?
Again, it's a long story, and it involves Bruce Dickinson.
Really?
Yes. So Bruce Dickinson sang Into the Black Hole for me. Then I went to Belgium, in Antwerp. It was in Antwerp, in a radio station, to do an interview about the Universal Migrator. And it was like a big station, with lots of guys working there, and they're acting really strange. And you sit here, and then they interviewed me and they said, well, how did you get Bruce Dickinson for the album? And I was like explaining the story like I did to you, and I looked to my right, who was sitting next to me, the mystery guest Bruce Dickinson.
Wow!
He came all the way to Belgium just to do this radio show. Brussels was, I don't know, doesn't matter. He came all the way, So afterwards we went out to a bar or something and had a drink, and then the story came out. He said, well, I really love the song Black Hole that I did, and my manager loves it too, and I would like to do an album with you. Well, I didn't have to think about that for a very long time, and I was like, oh my God, man. And I rushed home, and wrote all these songs, and when he was at my place recording, we discovered that we had a lot in common, like Deep Purple and like Hawkwind. So I wanted to do something in that style and impress him. So I went home and I wrote songs like crazy. I think I started writing 4 songs. I think it was Set Your Controls. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I demoed them and I sent them to him, and he said, oh yes, this is what we're talking about. And I'm going to start writing lyrics for them. And, I was, over the moon. I was like, holy shit, my hero. And then I did something really stupid. It was the beginning of the internet, and I told someone about it. And this person put it on the internet, and before you knew it, it was all over the internet. And his manager, Rod Smallwood, was not happy. He was so angry. And this and that, and you're not like, you're an amateur. And then I was like, oh, sorry, And I tried to get in contact with Bruce, and he was like, I'll solve it. But it really went totally wrong there, and his manager canceled the whole thing. Then I did something very childish, which I still regret to this day. I was like, really, Bruce Dickinson, why would you care what your manager says, if that's something you want? So I don't know if I should tell you this, but it was very childish, but it was 20 years ago. I wrote him an email, and it just had one line, I'm a prisoner, not a free, I'm a free man, not a prisoner.
Oh, that's funny.
And that was it, And then I read an interview with Bruce in Sweden Rock, it was, and he annihilated me. He was like, this is an amateur, and I love his music, but what he did was unbelievable. And so that was the end, and a shame, and I thought maybe it's water on the bridge, as we were playing a Belgian festival with Ayreon, and we were the headliners in the tent, and he was the headliner. And he just played before us, I think, on the other stage, and he could have made it to our stage into the Black Hole. So I invited him for that, but no, I think that that ship has sailed.
Gotcha. But those songs that you were writing for him,
right? Yeah. Then I was like, okay, I got these songs. What now? They're too heavy for an Ayreon.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? And I thought, because of this nasty experience, I felt really bad. I thought, like, I don't want to be difficult, get singers again. I want to work with my friends. Who are my friends? Russell Allen, Damien Wilson, Floor, and Dan Swano. They're good friends of me. They like my music. They will do it, and I thought, let's make this album with the 4 of them. And they all said yes immediately, and they all came to my studio. So that's how Star One was born.
That's great. And Damien Wilson is playing the U.S. later this year at a festival called Prog Power in Atlanta. And I say he's doing like a career retrospective, and the understanding is that he'll be doing at least 1 or 2 Ayreon or Star One songs part of the set.
Oh, so, cool. I didn't know.
Yeah, so it should be that's this September. It should be interesting.
Okay.
Obviously, this has been an absolute pleasure for us. Before we let you go, just in the interest of time, talk to us about some of the stuff that you're working on and some of the stuff that fans can look forward to from you in the in the months and maybe years to come.
I of course we did the live shows last year, September, and I've been working on the Blu-ray, editing the visuals and mixing the sound and shit. So that's all done. It's finished, and it will be released May 17, I think. Blu-ray and earbooks and I don't know, lots of formats, vinyl. Then I did another project, which is I revived 30-year-old songs, even from before Ayreon, that I wrote together with a friend of mine. And it was in the early 90s, and it was in the grunge period, so no one was interested. And it was somewhere between, I would say, Whitesnake and Leonard Skinner.
Was that the Vengeance stuff, or was that something?
No, that was after Vengeance.
Okay, after Vengeance.
After Vengeance. And it was called Plan 9, after the worst movie ever made, Plan 9 from Outer Space. And we couldn't get a deal, so nothing ever happened with those songs. And the singer, he said, shall we record one or two of these songs, because I want to get a solo album. And he was a good friend of mine, so I helped him out. And that was so much fun. And then we went through the old cassettes. That's how old it is. And we discovered a lot of jewels there. Like, oh my God, shame, if this people would never hear this. So in the end, we recorded the whole album together, called The Long Lost Songs, under the name Plan 9, with a lot of the musicians I love to work with on my albums. And it will be released together with the live stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Because as I was working on the live stuff, I had time to do this, and I didn't want to wait like a year releasing it. So I thought maybe if I release it together with the live stuff, some people, will get the live album, and maybe they'll put the the Plan 9 album in their cart too. So yeah, that's two releases for me, and then there is a third release for me this year that I'm totally not allowed to talk about. And after my Bruce Dickinson, Rod Smallwood incident, I've learned my lesson.
I'm not going to be the cause of you getting in trouble, so I'm not going to ask.
I already accidentally said too much about it to someone. So it's not for me. I wrote like a solo album for a well-known singer, which I think, maybe in a month or something it will already come. They will announce it. It will be released this year, and I worked on that for a year, and I'm extremely proud of that one. So I think. I have high expectations of that one again.
That's great. So no shortage of albums and releases to keep you busy this year. No. And it sounds like you might potentially be doing something next year as well as we get into the fall. So that sounds exciting as well.
Right. Yeah.
So go ahead, please finish.
Well, I would love to do a solo album next. That's
great.
But I always love to do a solo album, and it never works out. But I'm gonna try again. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because before we go, I discovered a couple of years ago the Strange Hobby album.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely loved.
Really?
some of the covers are some of my all-time favorite songs. Bus Stop, I thought, was such a great version of that Hollies song. I thought that was fantastic.
I love the Hollies. Yeah.
But I want to mention we did an episode a bit earlier in our run about the Monkees. We did an episode right after Mike Nesmith passed away. We thought it would be a good idea. I've always been the Monkees were like my first in rock and roll. Yeah. So I saw that you did covers of, I think it was Daydream Believer and Last Train to Clarksville. I just thought we have a mutual friend, Carrie, who has another metal podcast, and he's a big Monkees fan too, and we connected that way. So I thought I would just ask you how you feel about the Monkees, being that they were on that album that you did.
I love the Monkees. I love the TV series, because I'm that old, to be seeing it live on TV. Michael Nesmith was always my favorite. I don't know why, but stupid hat on. But Mickey Dolenz was an amazing singer, the drummer. He did Last Train to Clarksville, and of course, Daydream Believer was the English guy,
Davy Jones.
Davy Jones, yeah. The reason for Bowie to call himself David Bowie, by the way, because Yeah, Michael Dolenz. He's got a powerful voice, you know. If you hear Last Train to Clarksville, Last Train to Clarksville. So
I saw,
yeah,
saw Mickey and Mike perform together. It was a year before Mike passed away, and
okay.
Mickey still has such an
Whoa.
amazing live voice. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
He really still sounds fantastic.
It's funny you mentioned the Monkees because this morning I was rowing and then I listened to music, and I got a song of the Rival Sons. You know the Rival Sons?
Not well, but
Okay,
I've heard of them.
amazing singer on it, and it was totally the Monkees.
Wow.
Yeah, I gotta find out which song it is because you gotta hear it. It was, but that's a really good band. Yeah.
Well, I would recommend to anyone who hasn't heard this album, Strange Hobby. It's just a great, just a mix of songs from the 60s. Personally, just going on the list, my favorites on this, Norwegian Wood, I Am a Rock,
cool.
Sunny Afternoon, Bus Stop, like I mentioned before. Sloop John B is like my favorite Beach Boys song. And,
Yeah.
and
Well,
Daydream
Good
Believer, of
Vibrations.
course.
Good Vibrations still wins, but
Yep, fair enough. That's just, you know, no arguments here. But
no, you can't beat Good
yeah.
Vibrations.
And
Oh
I
man,
actually had to go onto eBay and buy the physical copy of it so I can get the 4 extra tracks because I really wanted to hear The Last Train to Clarksville and
right, yeah.
and the Ruby Tuesday cover
Ruby
by the Rolling
Tuesday,
Stones.
yeah.
Just a real. This was such a fun discovery for me years after it was originally released. So I didn't want to sign off without at least mentioning that. I think I thought it was really
cool.
well done.
Oh, cool! Because it flopped hopelessly. You know? we didn't say who it was behind it because in those days in the 60s you had Klaatu. I don't know if you heard of them, and everyone thought it was the Beatles. So it sold like crazy. And we wanted to get that effect, you know.
Yeah.
And then we mixed it at Abbey Road, you know, and you could put Abbey Road on the album.
Yep.
We thought, people are going to be really curious who's behind this, and no one gave a shit. And we even did a video clip for Pictures of Matchstick Man, you know, the Stage Girl song. But no, it flopped. Hopelessly.
Well, you've got.
I want you to know that 20 years later, I discovered it and I loved it. So if that makes
cool.
you feel any better.
It does. It certainly does. Yeah.
Arjen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us here on the Metal Exchange. Best of luck to you and all of the hard work that seems to be coming down the pike, and we wish you nothing but the best of success going forward.
Thanks so much. I enjoyed it, and thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. We appreciate it so much. Take care.
Okay, cool, bye.